Good morning, everybody. My name's Tom Coyle, and welcome to my political blog video, Stuck in the Middle, where I evaluate Trump's 100 days. Now, why are you listening to me? Well, back in July 2015, I predicted that Donald Trump would win the electoral vote, but lose the popular vote by almost 2 million votes. And that was before he even sealed up the nomination. I don't think there's a political pundit who is closer to my mark. So I know something about this. I'm also a big fan of analyzing bigger trends. So I'm going to take my trend analysis, as well as my analysis of his 100 days, and discuss not only his 100-day performance thus far, but what his chances for re-election look like. So here we go. His 100 days. Personally, I think 100 days is a stupid barometer to judge the presidency. This is like evaluating a baseball team based on spring batting practice. There's a long way to go. So why am I talking about 100 days in the first place? Well, because a lot of things that get Trump in trouble, because he talks about his 100 days. And during his campaign, he promised us the most impressive 100 days in history. So I'm going to grade him on that standard he set for himself. The short of it, he has been a miserable failure. In fact, it's kind of alarming that his supporters don't even see that. Look, I understand why people voted for Trump. And certainly I was even excited about some of the things Trump was talking about. Infrastructure spending, revamping healthcare, making a better system, and even looking, kind of reevaluating trade deals. I'm a big free trade person, but if Trump can give us a better deal, maybe let's turn that frown into a smile. Let's see what we can do with this. Frankly, he's not lived up to expectations at all. And if you grade him on effort, as one of my Facebook friends recently did, well, we'd be giving Super Bowl trophies to the Cleveland Browns based on effort. But we're talking about execution. Let's talk about healthcare. Not only did he embarrass himself by saying he did not realize how hard it was, but then he backed a plan that failed, frankly. The man he called a loser, President Obama, passed his healthcare plan. Now, many people want to wash that away by saying that's Paul Ryan's fault. But did Trump tell Paul Ryan to fix the plan, tweak the plan, make any changes to the plan whatsoever? And by the way, Paul Ryan's plan missed a lot of key points that Trump promised in his campaign that his healthcare plan would have. Now, people who want to apologize for Trump probably never watched an episode of The Apprentice, because there's several instances when Trump is grilling the team that lost a challenge, and he kept saying, what happened here? And he said, well, I delegated that task to John Smith. And Trump would always say, but did you follow up? Did you check? Trump is always talking about in every book, including a book that I like to read, Think Like a Champion, always double check, always get in the weeds a little bit. So Trump failed to do what he teaches in his book. He has not been able to accomplish anything of significance on any of the issues he promised. The wall, not only did he flip-flop on that, it looks like the American taxpayers are going to have to pay for it if it even gets through Congress. His tax plan, well, he's got some tax ideas, but nothing's been implemented. Congress approves the tax plan. And just to say he threw out an idea, well, that doesn't really mean anything. It was kind of embarrassing if you actually read his tax plan, the one that just came out a few days ago. One of the things it says is, grow the economy. No concrete steps. It's like, we're going to grow the economy. Well, any jackass can say that. Let's see some results. He has embarrassed himself on the foreign policy stage. While talking about his beautiful chocolate cake that he shared with President Xi of China, he neglected to remember the country he bombed, as he was saying, I was ordered the bombing of Iraq, and the journalist had to correct him and said, you mean Syria. When you have a reputation of not being very knowledgeable on world affairs, you don't help yourself by naming the wrong country that you just ordered bombed a few days ago. And then he recently said that he was shocked to learn Korea was so hard after talking to Xi for about 10 minutes. He said, I talked to him about for 10, 15 minutes, and I realized this North Korea thing is hard. Wow. Thank you, Captain Obvious. You expressed something that a junior high school student in Rufus McGough's class could tell you. And certainly anybody in your State Department, the department you refuse to fund or staff with people, could have told you that. But there we are. Performance-wise, he's just not cutting it. And then he points to his executive orders. Look at all these executive orders I signed. Well, as Seth Meyers discussed in his segment, A Closer Look, recently, basically he criticized Obama by saying, well, anyone who signs executive orders, that's dictatorial, and that's a sign of someone who can't make deals, who can't work with Congress. And see, and this brings me to my next point. All of Trump's mistakes are his own doing. Golfing, for instance. Now, I don't give a crap how much a president plays golf. But when he spent his entire campaign saying, I won't have time for golf, I'm going to be working for the people, and now he's on track to beat Obama's total golfing experience in 4 years of the presidency in this short time, well, guess what? How's it feel? So we're going to criticize your golfing because you made it an issue. A friend of mine pointed out how Trump is obese. Well, he's certainly not fit. Again, I wouldn't necessarily care, except he made it an issue against Hillary Clinton, suggesting she did not have the ability to be president based on mental and physical health. So there we go. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. But what is Trump doing well? And there are some things. We can debate how much of this is Trump and how much of this is plans that were already made by companies, but there are a couple factories, Carrier, Ford, GM, are keeping factories open that they were going to close. A closer look at the plans revealed they had already planned on keeping those factories open before Trump was even elected. However, elections are based on perceptions. That gives Trump a perception that he did something. He kept some jobs back. So he gets credit for that, at least maybe not from me, but at least from voters. And which brings me to the next point, re-election. Now, before I talk about his chances at re-election, which frankly, despite all this I just laid out, are pretty good, you have to look at the Democratic reaction. Oh, sorry about that. And the tipping of the camera there. So the Democratic reaction, here's what Democrats are doing. They're making the same mistake Republicans did in the wake of Obama's election. Republicans concluded, John McCain was not conservative enough. So what they did, they moved further and further to the right. They went further to the right and said, okay, yes, John McCain, we need a real conservative. And that essentially hurt Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, he's not an extreme guy, probably had a good chance against Obama, but he had to run further to the right to seal up the 2012 nomination, and then even ran to the right. Then he also had to basically carry the party banner as Republican politicians said stupid things. For example, the senator who said, if a woman is legitimately raped, she can't get pregnant. So now he's forcing himself to defend these stupid statements. What are the Democrats doing? The exact same thing. Hillary Clinton, she wasn't progressive enough. No. So all the party rhetoric and jockeying for the party chairmanship, they're going further to the left. And the more left they go, the more they're going to alienate voters. Because throughout our entire history, from the founding of our country, the key to winning the presidency is who is the person best positioned to claim to represent the center. It's always been that way. Now, Trump, despite some of the more radical things he talked about that anger people on the left, such as the wall and some other things, and his Muslim ban, well, he also talked about some kind of universal health care. And Paul Ryan's plan was not what Trump campaigned on, let's be clear on that. And he also talked about infrastructure spending. Now, this is the kind of stuff that was right in line with Dick Gephardt, the former Democrat who was very prominent in the 80s, ran for president several times. Trump's talked about tariffs on foreign goods. So these are the things that are, that resonated with those central voters. Again, whether that's happening now, I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about how he campaigned. So he was able to present himself as a central candidate, more to the center than Hillary was. Look what's happening recently. In the wake of Trump's elections, the liberals became very violent in their protests. Now, admittedly, when the Tea Party formed in the wake of Obama's election, they too had some vulgar protests. But the vulgarness was mainly in their rhetoric and the kind of signs they made, accusing Obama of being a monkey, say he's a Muslim, saying he was not born there. And they had some really despicable things, racist things about Obama that many of these protesters, if you went to any right-wing protest rally, you would see that. However, they did not destroy property. The liberal protesters have been violent and destroying property. And so when someone campaigns against, when you're trying to win over voters, people say, well, who do I want to associate themselves with? And which bad behavior do I want to separate myself from? they're hurting their own cause. And look what recently happened in Berkeley, all the violent protests because Ann Coulter was coming to speak. Just coming to speak. The idea on the left, especially on college campuses, that we're going to hear somebody's idea and debate that idea, that's gone. And frankly, that is kind of why Donald Trump got elected in the first place. People felt they couldn't express why they were voting for Trump. They'd be labeled as racist or some other thing, and so they didn't even bother expressing their concerns, and therefore, we lost an opportunity to engage with them, understand why they were voting for Trump, and even offer a counter argument. So as the Democrats continue to move left, this is going to hurt them. Now, you'll point to the polls and say Donald Trump's polling right now is worse than any president at this point in history, and you're right. But the problem is those polls are in a vacuum. There's no other candidate to compare himself with. Take this, for example. A recent USA Today poll showed that 96% of his base still supports him. Now, there are people drifting from Trump. I know a lot of Republican friends of mine who voted for Trump, or even non-Republican friends who voted for Trump, and they regret it. But the only Republicans I know, or the only Trump supporters I know who regret their choice, live in places like Virginia, Maryland, New York, and California. In other words, on the electoral map, it does not matter. So what I think is it's possible Trump could actually win the electoral vote again and lose the popular vote by even more votes, because you'll have people in these blue or purple states turning against him, but he's still going to win Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. And that's the key to the election. The only way to reverse this trend is if the Democrats get their act together between now and then and realize the answer is not going further to the left. That capitalism is a good thing, and more Democrats seem to abandon that idea that capitalism is good. They're calling the banks evil. All this stuff. This is going to hurt them in the general election. So basically, if the trend continues on its current track, Trump, I think, will win re-election. And here's another key point about Trump. For all of his buffoonery, that's not even a real word, but I'm going to call it buffoonery because it just fits, he's actually learning. Take a look at some things. Now, his statement that really ticked me off about North Korea being hard, and I wanted to respond, gee, thank you, Captain Obvious. But the fact that he now resonates that it's hard means that he may course correct and develop sound policy. His National Security Council staff is led by General H.R. McMaster, a very impressive individual, respected on both the left and the right. And he appears to be winning some battles. Steve Bannon, for instance, got removed from the National Security Council. Now, many people like me would say he should not have been on there in the first place. But the fact that Trump learned, for lack of a better term, and took him off means that he's course correcting. And the thing is about Donald Trump is he's had some spectacular failures, but in his life he's been able to course correct and rebuild himself. That's the danger Democrats face right now. If you're looking at his 100 days right now, you might think, yes, we're at the cusp of victory. Not necessarily. Trump, looking at trend lines, he's slowly course correcting. He's slowly turning the ship. And Democrats, man, you're still doing it. You're still going further and further to the left. And you risk losing this golden opportunity that Trump is giving you in a gift basket. I do think Democrats will win the midterm elections. And that's less about Democrats and Trump, and there's certain trends in our political system that seem to always resonate. And one of the key points is whenever you have a change in power in the presidency, Republican to Democrat, Democrat to Republican, typically either the House or the Senate turns over to the other party at the first midterm election. Again, general trend. This is kind of like the presidential election. Before you identified your candidates, it's very hard to go from 8 years of one party to then have another 4 of the same party. So Hillary Clinton was already facing that challenge. The American people don't like going further down the path of the left or the right for too long of a time. Basically, history has shown, with the exception of Franklin Roosevelt because of the Depression and World War II, they like to go one party for 4 or 8 years and say, okay, we've gone too far in that direction, let's put the other guys in office, at least in the presidency. And the other counter to that is to change one piece of the legislature, either the Senate or the House, in the wake of that first presidential election, that transfer election, if you will. So there we go. In summary, his performance over 100 days, it sucks. There is no way you can say anything good about it, frankly. Not if you're actually using an open mind and actually holding people to actual standards. If you're basing it on emotion, fine, that's another issue. But if you're using facts, no, failure. However, he's on track to win re-election, and Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot by moving further and further to the left. That is my 100 days analysis. Welcome your comments. Please subscribe to my blog, Stuck in the Middle. Thank you for watching.